straight, nice and tall. So I got my inspiration with cars probably shortly after I got into middle school. I've always been around cars. My dad was a big muscle car guy when he was growing up. Him and all of my uncles, just pretty much running through muscle cars, GTOs, Chevelles, Malibus. Just hearing the stories that they had were just exciting to me. Growing up with my dad, we used to always watch like the Power Block on the weekends. I learned a lot from him, but being a 90s kid, I guess I just gravitated more towards tuner cars. And I am part of that generation that was heavily influenced by the Fast and the Furious movies. So when Fast and the Furious came out, then that really kick-started my love for tuner cars. So gravitating towards Nissan and Mazda, my first car was actually pretty much the doppelganger to this car. It was a black hatch just like this. It was a 1990, so it was exactly the same age as me. It was 5-speed. It was everything for me. It had rot holes in the floorboards and stuff like that. It was pretty unsafe. And unfortunately, due to my inexperience with driving, my love for speed and my lack of experience driving, I had an unfortunate accident and I actually wrecked the car. So that was the end of that. I actually picked up another 240 after that. It was a pig nose, single overhead cam, blown head gasket, and I had intentions of fixing it, but I just didn't have a job at the time. I was so young, so I had ended up having to sell it. And from there, I just pretty much bounced through cars. I joined the military, and when I got to Florida for my A school, I picked up an 85 Turbo 300ZX. From there, I went to Virginia, and from Virginia, I ended up having to trade a 300ZX because of all the electrical problems that I ended up having. I traded in for a 2003 Mazda Miata. I was actually in line to pick up an R32 GTR before they were legal in the States, and I sold the Miata and didn't end up with a GTR, but I ended up with a Mark III Supra. Had fun with that for a little while, got rid of it because it was super heavy and underpowered, and I traded it for a red S13 hatch. I actually didn't even want to pick this car up. It was I'd seen it on Facebook. It was the white truck. So I'd actually seen this car on Facebook. I didn't even try to pick it up myself. I had actually thrown the idea to one of my friends that if he had wanted to buy the car, I'd drive him down to Richmond. We'd look at the car, he'd pick it up, and we'd drive it back. He declined. So the car kind of sat there in the back of my head for maybe a week or so. And I eventually just kind of said, screw it. I sold the red hatch that I had, and 2 or 3 weeks later, I was driving this back from Richmond. So the car, as it sits right now, it's got a Greddy Truss turbo. It's pushing about 14 pounds. It's got 550cc injectors. It's got an R32 GTR fuel pump. It's got a straight pipe exhaust all the way from the turbo back, about 3.5 inches. It's got an HKS intercooler. It's got a Q45 LSD rear end in it. It also has a Tomei turbo manifold. The car as it sits is projected around 300 wheel. I haven't gotten it dynoed. It definitely needs a tune. It's running a stock ECU. All the stuff is going to get sorted out over the winter. The paint, the everything. I'm pretty much going to try to rebuild this car. I love the car, the way that the car is as it sits, but it definitely needs to be fine-tuned everywhere. It was just kind of a spur-of-the-moment build. So the car has K-Office KS05R wheels. I believe they're discontinued. And I really do like the way that the car looks with the wheels on. Over the winter when I get the car painted, I'm going to try and get the wheels repainted white with like a little pearl thrown into it, just to kind of give it that pop. The car's going to remain black. So the car scene today is kind of hit or miss. I love networking and socializing. I love meeting people with S chassis everywhere. In this area, there doesn't really seem to be much. So whenever there is an S chassis, I'm always the one to just run over there and start talking to them and talk about what they're doing with their car, what they plan on doing with it, and just make friends. Like it's awesome for that. I've met some really great people through the car scene. I've also met some really terrible people in the car scene, but it's like that with anything. So if any of you happen to see me on the road, the black right-hand drive 180SX with Drift S Vida, on the top of the windshield, feel free to say hey. I'm always down to chit chat. And if I have a place to go, I'll make sure not to be too rude.
Hussle, music. I'm out here on a mission and I'm all alone. I'm far from where I'm going and I'm far from home. Somehow I know I'm moving in the right direction. My mama always told me I was gonna be special. I'm out here on a mission.